Hello everyone, my name is Jen and welcome to the Book Refuge. Alright, hello everybody and welcome to another video, and today we are doing a video that was requested by Honey Lay, and this is one that I hesitated to make because I don't really do this type of content anymore. And I'll get into that. I don't want this whole video to be a discussion, but it also kind of is. And that is I'm going to give you some fantasy romance recommendations based on spice level, okay? I have done this in the past, way back when I did it with historical romance specifically. You know, kind of sharing all the way up my spice scale, different recommendations. And it's something that, again, I don't really focus on anymore because though I do like to read open door scenes in fantasy, in all types of romance, I want to see them bumping uglies, them getting spicy. I want to see it. But as I've shared over the years here, I also don't like how, if you are interested in reading open door sex scenes, it's considered fairy smut if you want that in a fantasy romance. And I also don't like when that's the only thing people are looking for. So I'm in this weird place, okay? I'm in this weird place where I don't really like either explanation. And I mean, the answer always is that I want people to be able to read what they want. And I know as someone who has tried to do it myself, when you go looking for open door spice in fantasy romance, let's say you type in spicy romance RECS, you are going to get probably 3 things recommended to you, okay? I bet you can say it with me now. Fourth Wing, ACOTAR, and Jennifer Armentrout. Those are probably what you're going to get recommended to you. And while those do have some open door sex scenes in them, I, as someone who, you know, I have a certain expectation in my mind when someone says something is spicy, I don't feel that those ones, particularly their first books in the series at least, have that at all, you know? And this isn't a judgment on that, but it is also, I'm constantly befuddled. And even friends of mine, when they've made videos recommending spicy romance, fantasy romance, they recommend some of the, I mean, they barely make me like blush at all. And again, maybe I am a hardened woman to these things, but there's that. I also understand the other side of it, where people are told a book is very spicy and then they don't want to read it or they don't want to be seen reading it. Now, I know. There's a full conversation to be had about, like, should you be ashamed to be reading something? But I actually have a counter to this, in that one of my friends, she is a teacher. She teaches middle school and elementary school. And I had convinced her to read a certain book. We'll get into it because I'm going to share about that book is on this list. And it only has, I believe, like 1.5 sex scenes in it that are open door. And she, you know, it wasn't a book that she was comfortable with her students knowing that she had read. And therefore, she never continued on with the series because, you know, I did tell her, I was like, well, there are a couple more scenes in future books. Now, I don't consider my friend to be a prude or that she's being overly judgmental with not wanting to read open door sex scenes that she knows some of her students may have read the books. Now, again, I'm really not looking to get into that conversation with it. We're going to go a completely different way with this. I'm just going to give you the RECS. I'm just trying to say that I understand people wanting any range that they want. Maybe there's a certain level that they're comfortable with reading that, like, they don't want to read it if it tends to be more erotic. They want it to focus on the fantasy. And sometimes if you read a fantasy that is erotic in nature, or you've heard that, you assume that the whole thing is just about that, you know? So there are different reasons why people want to know the spice level of books. And I feel that the mainstream has a very skewed scale. And while I think there are reasons that has happened, because for a while, like, there was like no open door sex in fantasy that was romantic. Maybe there was rape happening, or there were certain scenes and things that it wasn't leading towards a romance. So people, I guess, don't consider that spicy then or anything. there's so many mixed things, and I've done a whole topic on like the shame of it or whatever. But my point being with this to say, I don't really like to make videos because they lead me down this rabbit hole if I'm not trying to say one is better or the other by putting it on a scale, okay? Because I feel like anytime you put something on a scale, we're assuming like rating is like this is good and this is bad, right? Whereas with a spice rating, that's a completely different thing, you know? It isn't the same as a star scale. Like, I'm not saying a book is better or worse for having more. That is my point of where I'm getting to with this. Now, before we get into these recommendations, we have to talk about what my scale is. Now, I haven't shared this scale in a long time, and it is a scale that I myself may be adjusting, you know, because when I do my weekly wrap-ups, I share the star rating and the heat rating of every book, because I've been doing that now for about 5 years because of some of the things that I've said, right? Where people say something is spicy and there's nothing in it. Like, they use the word cock and people are like, oh, it's spicy. And I'm like, is it? Is it though? So I had to create a scale that is what I feel like my heat rating is. And again, I haven't shared this in a long time because I just kind of assume it's kind of known, but I realize that for this type of thing, I need to tell you what mine is. So we're going to, I'm going to go through this scale very briefly, and then I'm going to tell you how I'm splitting this thing up, because I'm going to do it in 3 categories, but my scale has about 7 different levels, and I'll explain that. So here we go. My scale goes like this. The bottom of it is, and again, this isn't a bottom because it's bad. This is just how the heat rating goes. I have no steam at all. Obviously, there is nothing, not even a hint, there's no steam happening. Then I have a steam puff. This means to me there's usually sexual tension. It is still a romance. There's maybe a kiss or a fade to black scene. This could mean it's YA or it's just, there's nothing much going on. Then we get into my 1 chili pepper, which for me is, and I have a lot of sass with this. I said there's hands or mouth used, but no penetration is on the page. There could be heavy petting, but the deed is done in either a fade to black or it isn't very detailed. Maybe they use very flowery language for it. Allusion is used, or there is one scene and it is in the very last part of the book. Maybe it's even in the epilogue. And I said this could even mean it gives me lady blue balls. So a 1 chili pepper can be both like a bad connotation to me and a good one, because to me, it can just mean it's a low spice story. And we have a few of those in here. And by hands or mouth, I literally mean like there's someone getting off, but we don't do a full sex scene being seen. Maybe we're doing some, I'm just saying, maybe we're doing some dry humping, maybe we're doing that, but it's not, but the actual full sex scene is either just alluded to or whatever. And again, I have some examples to that I will share. Or the bad connotation, as I said, is that they teased us with it the whole time. And there was no reason to be teasing us. Like, the author just, it's not that they were afraid to do it. They just don't. That is something that annoys me. Okay, then, of course, there is 1.5, and that'll be between this and number 2, which is this. 2 chili peppers is the deed is done, but it's either very delayed, which means it's, way near the end of the book, or there is no more than 2 scenes. Maybe it's more flowery language is used for the body parts, only more conventional sexual positions and situations. So this is where my scale starts to be a bit different from sometimes others, because I don't purely go on the number of scenes. That is not what my chili peppers mean. Because, example, there are some books by Claire Kent, who I am a PA for her. I also very much love her books. Some of her books have quite a bit of sex in them, but they're all pretty boring sex, as it were. That doesn't mean I find the books boring, but I mean, we're not doing any type of kink. There's not, anything more than we maybe do 2 different types of positions. There's doggy or missionary, and that's it. And again, this isn't making that a bad thing. That's just saying when I'm sharing chili peppers for a book, keep in mind that for me, it's both number and intensity. That is how I do this. And that is how these books we're going to talk about are going to be focused on. So then you can now see like where a 1.5 is. Maybe we get more than one scene, but they're just very much like not overly detailed. Like the author wants you to know there's sex happening, but I'm not going to explain all the body parts to you and all the things. So that's where that sits. Okay, then we get to number 3. Now this is where the vast, vast, vast majority of what I rate is going to sit. You know, it means by my definition is there are more things happening. They're a bit more graphic and detailed, and they happen more often. Maybe there is a little bit of kink. I say maybe there's a little bit of spank or a tickle, right? Maybe we're putting in some of the more common types of kink might even be there. Maybe there's a throat necklace, but it's not in a full BDSM context. Maybe there's some hair pulling. Maybe it's some aggressive things. So again, the intensity of the sex mixed with frequency. So again, this is where the vast majority of contemporary romances are sitting. It's where a lot of fantasy romances sit at, and it's why I have like the biggest number fit into that area. Okay. So wording is sometimes still more romantic, like it's not fully feeling like it is on the smut side. But yeah, this is kind of where it's saying. Also, if the sex takes till about like 40 to 50% to happen, it's not happening in the very beginning, again, unless it's a one night. See, there's so much variation to this. It's not just like a one night stand or something like that, because yes, sometimes you have sex before 40% when it's a one night stand, but then you don't for a while. Okay, then we have number 4, which is things are happening fairly often. They're very graphic in description, as in the words used are more crude and aggressive during the act. So maybe now we're starting to get some dirty talk. We're getting some like, you know, I'm not going to say all the words, but you know. There is lots more foreplay happening. There's sexy talk. It can be slightly kinky. There may be anal put in. There is still a bigger plot to the book though. So this is again a bit more common. This is where I have things fit. A lot of times my spice sits at like a 3.5 because it's not fully pushing over into this 4 area. And also again, frequency wise, there can be some books that there's only 2 sex scenes, but they go hard and the author goes into very detailed. Then maybe they're sitting at a 3.5 to a 4, but yet there's only a couple scenes. And this is what makes it separate to me, because I might put a book at a 3.5, but there's still only a few scenes. They just start to get kind of kinky and everything. Okay, and then we have my 5 chili pepper scale, which I very, very rarely have anything that's out of 5. Even some of the erotic romances, I still have them at like a 4.5. because they still have a romance plot, okay? And I'll explain the difference here. So a 5 chili pepper for me is erotica. It means the sex happens soon, it happens often, it's very graphic, and it's explained in detail. It's kinky as fuck. Plot of the book may just be about the banging. On very rare occasions, there could still be more going on. So what do I mean by this? You'll see when I share some of these recommendations. Maybe it is an erotic romance, but there still is other plot happening, which can be in fantasy romance a lot. But sex is the main like focus. Then we're going to have a 5 chili pepper. Again, a lot of my erotic romances sit at a 4.5 on the spice scale because, so example of this one that I just read is Deacon, which is a dark cowboy romance. And there's a lot of sex. It's kinky sex. There's a BDSM stuff going on. The sex is progressing their relationship, so it's very important to it. That's what I consider erotic romance. But there still was a suspense plot going on. There still is other things they have to deal with. So the focus isn't solely on their sex. Like there is other stuff going. So for me, that one isn't quite erotica. That's erotic romance. And erotic romance area is about where a 4.5 sits. Now, again, personal preference here, or personal choice here. There are a few erotic romances that I have at a 5 because of frequency then. Again, that's where those two things meet for me. There's both intensity and frequency. And that is kind of where like the half stars sit with me. So After that full explanation I just did right there. Okay, so I just want you to know that when we're going to go through these recommendations. So I know I had to take some time to do that. If you guys were already aware of my scale, you probably didn't need this, but I just wanted to remind you of what that is. So again, how I split this up, I'm not going to do by every single chili pepper. I split this into 3 groups. So I will have my low spice, aka I titled this Almost Safe for Work, is what this title is going to be called, okay? Which means this is going to go all the way up to kind of like the 2.5 level, where I still feel comfortable kind of recommending these to my friends who don't fully like spice. It doesn't mean that there aren't graphic scenes. Like, all the ones I'm recommending have some type of an open door scene, but maybe there's only one, and maybe it's only partially there, and I'll explain for each one kind of what that means. Now, for this video, I'm not going to do full explanation of the books. All these books I'm going to talk about, I've talked about in other videos. The point of this video is just recommending them based on the spice, so I am going to be focused on talking about that part in it. Again, you can see that's not what I mostly do on this channel anymore. I'm much more focused on what the romance is. This video is special, okay? So I am going to talk about the relationship focused and what type of sex is included in each book, because that is the purpose of this video. I still recommend most of these books, okay? So that'll be the bottom layer, is the Almost Safe for Work. Again, they all still have some form of graphic scene, so just be prepared for that. Then we'll have the mid-level. Again, this is where the vast majority that I enjoy reading will sit at, right? I know I'm going to get some full sex scenes, and I'm planning to rate these ones between that, like, there'll be some crossover between like the 2.5 to this one will go to like a 3.5, okay? That is where these ones are going to sit. And the ones that tip up into the top level, which I will just say the mega chili peppers. These ones will go from 3.5 to 5 chili peppers on my scale, okay? So that is how we're dividing these ones up. We'll have the Almost Safe for Work, the medium boil, and the sauna heat, okay? And again, as some of them have crossover, I'll explain why. And most of that has to do with frequency and description of the sex, okay? So let's start with that Almost Safe for Work area. And to begin this, I'm going to start off with some of the ones that I see touted as spicy, because I throw a bit of side eye when I see a few of these specifically tossed around as being almost erotic type things, and I just laugh because I'm like, our scales are so different, okay? And of course, I have to start with some of the most popular ones. We have, of course, Fourth Wing. This is the one I was talking about that my friend, I got her to read Fourth Wing. She liked it. For her, the bit of spice in this one made her uncomfortable. Again, my friend doesn't want to read sex scenes. I know some of you don't care for those either. And she was seeing some of her students reading this. Now, this is an adult fantasy romance. I get that. That does not mean that sometimes students aren't reading them, right? I would never recommend them to that, but that doesn't mean that she hasn't seen some of her students carrying around a copy of Fourth Wing. And so for her, having read it, she was like, I don't feel comfortable about that I've read this and my students have read it and I don't like it. That's my friend's opinion, okay? That's no shade to anyone who feels it, but I do understand her opinion of she doesn't like want to have a student see that she's reading a same book that they've read and know what's in it, you know? So this is a book that will be touted as it is a spicy romance. It's there. I would consider this one about a 2, okay? There is only, I think in this book specifically, like 1.5 scenes. There are some dream scenes, and there are a lot of, in Violet's head, her thinking about things. But in as far as what's on page, there's about 1.5 scenes in here. So I would consider this book almost safe for work. If you had the audiobook playing and it were to accidentally, your earbud disconnected and people heard it, for the most part, you're going to be pretty safe. It's most likely you're not going to have a sex scene happening when the earbud pops out, right? That's what I would call almost safe for work. Not 100% safe, because you still got a horny gal in here, but mostly safe. The other one, which of course I have a copy of it, I did not want to take it down from the beautiful place I have it sitting. ACOTAR, okay? This is a myth that must be busted, that must be squashed. I don't know how we got here, but even chapter 55 of book 2, y'all, is one little sex fest that happens, okay? There is 1.5 sex scenes in book 1, and maybe 2 and a kind of a half in book 2. These are a series that I also consider almost safe for work until you get to kind of the novella has a very strange erotic scene in it, and then Silver Flames. Okay, but the original trilogy of ACOTAR is almost safe for work. And I was talking with my friend, this was at one point listed as like YA, right? Now they were kind of wrong to put it there. Books like this are actually what kind of led to there needing to be a new adult section. But honest to goodness, it is the most basic, especially in book 1, the most basic, simple sex scene that lasts about 30 seconds in here. And the way that this is called fairy smut, I can roll my eyes right out of my head with what I think about that. Okay? Okay. Sass done. That does, again, not to I don't know how to say that, but not to like belittle anyone who feels that. I just don't like when it's advertised that way as like, because to me that's just, it's so not, you know? So continuing on, those are the 2 that I have the most like feels on, but we'll continue on. So another one that I would consider about at a 2 is Daughter of No Worlds. These ones are going to be re-released very shortly. I love the romance in this series. Again, I'm not going into explanations of books. We're just talking about the spice in it. This is a very slow burn. This relationship between Max and Tasana is beautiful, but there's not a lot of on-page things happening. This one has more longing, and it's, again, very romantic, but you don't really got to worry about being surprised by Dick very often in these ones. It's a very... again, almost safe for work series while still having a beautiful romance in it. I would say that The Serpent and the Wings of Night is about at the same level too. I don't know, something about vampires can make it feel like it's saucier than it is, but I honestly think that one kind of sits about the same too. Okay, another really popular one right now, When the Moon Hatched. This one I would consider at a 1.5. Not much at all happening in here in regards to that. This one is another very much a longing, angsty, beautiful tale. I loved this book, but definitely safe for work minus 1 or 2 chapters in here. And these ones I believe are pretty romantically written as well, is what I would say. So definitely fits in there. Okay, we also have Bride of the Shadow King. Now, I've only read this entry in the series, so I can't speak for what the spice level gets to later, but this one sits at about a 1.5 as well, so keep that in mind with this one. These ones have been re-released by Ace did this, and yeah, this one is a arranged marriage also with a hidden identity, so very interesting one. Got some pretty art to share, but even though the art's a little spicy, this first book itself, honestly, pretty safe for work. I'd say it does hit about a new adult level for the heat in it, so very good. Okay, then there was Gilded Wicked Mirrors. I love showing off this one. I got an absolutely stunning ARC copy of this one, maybe an author you haven't heard of, Hazel St. Louis. This one is about vampires and a ballerina and a magical world where there's a lot of hidden deviance going on. This one was about a 1. We only really have kind of a, as I said, a handsy, mouthy, get each other off scene in this one. I'm very intrigued for where this series will go. But if you would like low spice with a very unique story, I do recommend. Look, I'm kind of matching this aesthetic. I have my dark green on, and wow, this book, so beautiful. Love it. And then this one I would consider on the line between the almost safe for work and medium level, and is one I also just read, which was Iron and Embers by Helen S. I enjoyed this a lot. This one, again, sits probably at about a 2. There is a lot of their minds thinking about sex in this one, so this is why this one, like some of the words lean into being a bit raunchier, but it's all kind of in their heads. There's not a ton of on-page stuff happening, but this one is more on the upper side of the safe for work, possibly. Okay, one other one. Right, okay, this is one other one. I just don't have a physical copy, so I need to remember to mention it. One I just read was The Hurricane Wars by Thea Guanzin. This is one I would consider a 0.5 up to a 1, okay? So this is one that there was no full-blown sex in this first book, okay? To the point where I wasn't sure whether this was actually a new adult or an adult romance. Now, again, not just because lack of sex would make something younger. These characters were just written a little bit younger, even though I double checked, and I think they're like, I don't know, I think they're 21 and 26. Like, they may even be closer to the same age, because I don't think this was listed as age gap or anything. But there was not even a full sex scene in this one. By the end of it. So anyone calling this one a spicy Raylo, they are lying. Again, I haven't read book 2 yet. I do plan to continue and read book 2. Probably by audio I will. But no. So this one is low on that, and definitely safe for work to read, minus literally, I think, the last 2 chapters. But again, it's not even a full scene, and the language in this one was written very sparingly for this one. So you were good to go with that. Okay, now let's go up to that mid-level range, okay? And as I said, with this one, I'm going to go kind of from 2.5 to 3.5. Now, I know that that is a smaller wedge area than what we did at the safe for work level. But again, I think a lot of books fit into this area for me because it's where I think more authors are comfortable doing with having some more sex scenes without the book being fully focused on sex, right? So we're just going to go through a stack of these here. So one that I really enjoyed, I can't wait to read the next one, is Ruin by Gillian Eliza West. This is an enemies to lovers, Hades and Persephone retelling, also inspired by, I believe, some Greek. I think they said both Greek and, what's the other she said that it's inspired by? I just read a thing on it. Did she say in here? I don't know, but it's definitely Hades and Persephone coded. And the second half of this series comes out very soon. I cannot wait. I'm trying to hold out for the physical copy of it because I really want to read that, but I do have an arc of this one. So this was a debut author. If you love those Hades and Persephone vibes, this is definitely one to pick up. I would consider that one a 2.5 or a 3. Another one that I need to read the second half of the duology, but I adored, was The Secrets of Jane by Charlotte Mallory. Now, this is an example of, there isn't a ton of scenes, but A, their minds are pretty naughty. These two have some dirty minds going on. 2, some of the scenes have some kinkiness to them, including a little bit of dubcon, so a bit darker going on. There are binds being used. There is a captor-captive element to this one. So this is one where there are not a ton of on-page sex scenes, but the intensity level of the scenes pushed it up a bit higher for me. This is also an author that, absolutely loved, and I can't wait to read. I'm holding out to get the physical second edition, which I pre-ordered from her. And see, look here, there's that throat grab right there. You know, we love to see that. So this one fits about there for me, but it's not a full-blown. We have A Soul to Keep by Opal Rain. This is another one where the type of sex happening, we have some monster body parts coming on. Monster body parts will come back around in our final tier for sure. but a lot of angst and a very slow burn to get to the sex in this one. But once we have it, again, there's some interesting body parts. There's some pretty like intense sexual experiences happening. And this is another one that I have read books, I think 1 through 5 in the series, and some of them have more sex than others. So this is one where, yeah, there isn't anything happening super quick. It's also that the sex can be very dangerous as well. So there's an added element of that going on. These are the Dustwalker Brides, by the way. I have a special edition of that. Okay, then we have The Horde Kings of Shadow by Zoe Draven, and I would also include all Zoe Draven that I've read. I sit her books at about a 3, 3.5. We have slightly monster body parts going on within these ones. Like there's knots involved. These are fated mates. This one is a dragon rider hero. Also like her Brides of Kalor. Those ones have some biting involved. They're like vampire berserkers. So very intense in here. So with knots, if you don't know what a knot is, just in case, it is a like, it's like, you know, Megaverse romances as well as some shifters as well as some magical beings where, I think this one has a knot actually. Maybe I'm making that up. I know her other ones do. Maybe I'm wrong about this hero having it, but anyway, a lot of hers, they have knots and it's at like the base of the penis and it's used to like lock in the seed, so you get a bit more kinkier. This one of the sex scenes takes place in a cave together and they're basically being compelled into sex by their matehood, so we got a little bit more feistiness happening, as I've said. And then, and I included this one because I'm going to include another one from this author and I want to show the dichotomy between the two. Oh, I love this copy. It is so stunning. I just love it. Oh, it's beautiful. That is Between Wrath and Mercy. So this is one that once we have some spice between them, it is pretty good, but it is a very slow burn to it between them. And then once we have it, there's some really hot scenes in here. So I would put this one at like a 2.5 or a 3 as well. But I just love this story. This one has a heroine who, instead of her daughter being the chosen one, she's the chosen one. So we have like a chosen one who's in her late, like I think like late 30s and is powerful. And these fated mates are just amazing. I love this couple so much. Okay. Now we're going to go to the hot tier, okay? So these are ones that are between like a 3.5 to a 5 for me. And most of them, as I said, will sit between a 3.5 and a 4.5. I only really have one, well, a couple of these might be almost out of 5. It's been a while since I've read them, but these ones sit pretty hot. So the first one I want to say, which is about a 3.5, well, we'll start with it because, like I said, I mentioned Jess Wisecup just for Between Wrath and Mercy. Then we have Jess Wisecup with Feathers from the Sky. And this is a great one to share because the second half of this duology is coming in May, and I can't wait to read it. And this is vampires, and so there is a lot of, like, there's a captor-captive situation in here. There's blood taking that happens in here. There is some dubious consent. Lots of really crude language and some kinky things going on, but there's still lots of other plot that's going on in this one. So it isn't solely focused on the sex at all, but it is very hot, like, whew, very spicy. Then we have Yearning for Her by Tiffany Roberts. And this is oh, look at this beautiful cover. I just got this edition from Aurora Crate. It's beautiful. And this couple, we have a hero who is I think incubus. Is that what the heroes are called? I've read like succubus. I think he is he an incubus? Yes. Okay. So he's an incubus and he discovers that he has a mate. And so he was always able to be fed off of sex, right? That's what he gets fed off of. And this time around, he discovers that he has a mate and he can no longer take sustenance from just whoever he wants to fuck. He can only now be sustained from her. Well, the thing is, she doesn't want any meaningless sexual situations, so he's going to need to find ways to like persuade her to love him. Anyway, like I said, I'm not going to go into full things, but This one has a lot of sex because he gets fed by it. So that's one of the reasons why this one is higher up on this list. Then we, of course, have to talk about a couple books by Catherine Moon. So I would consider Catherine Moon, some of her books are more like paranormal than fantasy or whatever, but I would consider her an erotic fantasy romance author. And so she has her Lady of Rooksgrave Manor series. The series is Tempting Monsters. These are all reverse harem or why choose romances from her. One woman, 4 to 5 partners in each of these, and sex is kind of the main theme in all of it. So lots of that. Though there is still a through line plot that I have read that I have enjoyed when I've read her books. But just know you're in it for the kinky sex and the strange creature she's having said sex with. There's also her Monster Smash series, which involves monster sex workers. And we have, in this first one, it's a hero who is an orc, and he sets up these fun and spicy situations for his clients where they get to act out whatever their desires are. So very fun, very kinky. It's a good time. There we go. And then the last one I want to mention for this is Court of the Vampire Queen by Katie Robert, which has nicely been put into one book by her publisher now. And this one is also a why choose romance, and it has a queen who is basically supposed to get impregnated because her child is supposed to be a like special one or something like that. And she gets basically locked into this magical house with these different beings who are supposed to fuck her and get her pregnant. So it's going to be an interesting situation for everybody, to say the least, right? But very hot, very kinky. This one does have some scenes in it as well, which is great. So there are plenty of others that fit on the like erotic side of fantasy, but these were a few I wanted to share that I still really like the stories around them, even though they are heavily focused on that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed kind of this discussion part of it, as well as me sharing my spice scale again. So that maybe you didn't, because again, it's been a long time since I've shared spice and this isn't a type of video I plan to make very often. But again, it was suggested by Honey Lay, and I thought it was be interesting to do because of all of I don't want to call it misinformation about spice, because it's opinion, it's not misinformation. Like each person like has their own idea of what is too much spice in a story for them, or like what they're comfortable with. And so it's not something I want to like shame anyone for wanting it to fit in a certain category or not. Just if you are a follower of my channel, I want you to know this is where they sit for me, if that helps. So thank you so much for watching this video. I appreciate you so much, and I hope you will have given this video a like and you'll subscribe to my channel. I just hit 24,000, which is amazing. I really hope by the end of the year I can get to 25K. That would be brilliant in my mind. Like, I just can't even imagine. That would be fantastic. So thank you so much for watching, friends, and I'll see you next time.